right. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Hey, this video is going to be titled Matthew chapter 24, part 1. I'm going to do 3 parts of this because it's pretty long. So I'm going to be talking pretty quick, but I'll put the verses and everything that I'm referring to. I'll put those in the description, right? All right. So growing up in a denominational church, how many times have you heard a preacher say that Matthew 24 is about the rapture of the body of Christ, right? Or about the times that we're living in that we're going to see these things. So let's see if those men were right. So less than 1 week after Jesus entered into Jerusalem, he was nailed to a cross. Matthew's 23 and 24, chapters 23 and 24. This is a works-based salvation chapter, right? So in verse 2 of Matthew chapter 24, and I'm not going to read it, so just for sake of time, you can go back and read these verses. I'm just summing these things up for you. Jesus is telling them that the destruction of Jerusalem is coming. So if you skip down to verse 15, the Antichrist sits in the holy place. Well, that holy place is the rebuilt temple. By the time you get to verse 15, the temple has been rebuilt and the Antichrist has come. So 3.5 years into the tribulation. Verse 3, this is the disciples asking Jesus 3 questions about the sign of his coming and the end of the world. So, question, what is the only thing that has to happen according to prophecy before Christ returns on the earth at his second coming? Well, Daniel's 70th week, the tribulation, right? The 7-year trib. When John the Baptist showed up, everything was ready to be fulfilled. Matthew chapter 24 is an overview of the 70th week of Daniel, the period of 2,520 days. God goes by a lunar year, 360-day years, not 365 as we're taught today, right? When you start reading the book of Daniel, you will see the different time periods. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 is 3.5 years, or 1,260 days. Daniel chapter 8, verse 14 is 2,300 days. Daniel chapter 12, verse 7 is 1,260 days. Daniel chapter 12, verse 11 is 1,290 days. And 30 days beyond. Now look at verses 12. Now look at verse 12 of Daniel chapter 12. It's 1,335 days. Revelation chapter 11, verse 2 is 42 months, or 3.5 years, or 1,260 days. Revelation chapter 11, verse 3 is 1,260 days. Revelation chapter 12, verses 6 and 14, 1,260 days. Revelation 13, verse 5, 42 months, or 1,260 days. Now, if you go back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 6, like I said, I'm just going to sum these up for you and just show you some very clear words in these verses. All right, verse 6. And I quote, "But the end is not yet." Verse 8, and I quote, "Beginning of sorrows." Verse 9, and I quote, the word "then." Verse 15, "when." Verse 21, "for then." Verse 29, "immediately after." Verse 30, "and then shall appear." So Jesus Christ is clearly progressing through the tribulation period in this chapter. So the falling away has to happen first, then the man of sin be revealed. That's Paul talks about that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Then followed by a period of peace and safety, then the beginning of sorrows, then shall great tribulation. Verse 21. Then in verse 29, he says, after the tribulation. This is the 6th seal in the book of Revelation. What did God say in Joel chapter 2, verse 28 to 31? Before that great and notable day of the Lord come. That deals with the role of the Antichrist, right? And at the end of that, God will start pouring out those vials of wrath. In Revelation 15, John sees the 7 angels with those last 7 vials of wrath, which will be poured out on the Antichrist and his kingdom. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. And then that's followed by the judgment, and then they will go into the kingdom. So the tribulation lasts 1,260 days, right? The second coming comes 1,290 days after the tribulation starts, which is the The judgment will last for 45 days, which is 1,335 days, so 1,335 days, and those who will make it into the kingdom. So in verse 4, Jesus says, take heed that no man deceive you. And I'm talking about Matthew chapter 24 here. And then in verse 5, many shall come in my name, shall deceive many. This is the falling away. So if you take a look at 1 John 2:18, I've got here in my notes, read it. I put there, read it. So I got to flip over to it because I didn't put it here in my study or in my notes for my video. So 1 John 2:18. These are really small books. 1 John 2:18. Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. Okay, so Satan is working, but something is currently withholding, which is the body of Christ. That Jew will go back under the law and make a covenant with the Antichrist. That is what the book of Hebrews is talking about. So what's the first seal in the book of Revelation? Well, it's a man on a white horse with a crown in the name of peace. It will be a peace treaty in Israel, in the Middle East. If you hear about a deal being struck to build that temple in Jerusalem, get ready to be caught up in the clouds. And they're already kind of hinting around it right now. So those Jews are already about to start building that temple right now. We already see it. Old John Hagee is sending money over there to help rebuild that temple. You must understand why Jesus is telling his disciples to be ready and what to look for. These folks are being prepared to go through the tribulation. So verse 7 of Matthew 24, this is the third seal. The nation shall rise against nation, and there shall be famines. That's the black horse with a pair of balances. Verse 8, these are the beginning of sorrows. The majority of men today are concerned about approving themselves among other men rather than to 2 Timothy 2:15, approving themselves unto God. So in conclusion, Matthew 24 has nothing to do with what God is doing today. God is building the body of Christ. He is not fulfilling prophecy. So please test what you are being taught. And this is just part one. Like I said, we got 3 parts to this that I'm going to do. So we'll continue on with part 2 and 3. Grace and peace.